Today for an interactive debate on knowledge, science and democracy and the role of evidence in policy and society. It's never been a more important time to talk about these issues. Now, today's Euractiv event is supported by the European University Association. You can follow along online, of course, using the hashtag #EADebates. I mean, part of the aim of today's discussion is really to spread the word about science and research and innovation and how important it is to the wider public. So without the recent decades innovation, we wouldn't even be able to have today's event. So please do use all the tools at your disposal to spread the word. And of course, you can ask questions of our esteemed panelists using the Ask button. Now, the EU's population has never been better educated, but we do also have some ambitious new targets for 2020 to have around 40% of the young population with a higher education qualification. And we've seen that over the last year, COVID-19 has been a sort of stress test for our society. And the role of research, innovation and experts in helping us overcome this horrible pandemic has been brought to the fore. But at the same time, we have seen in parallel an infodemic and a doubting of vaccines and so on. So we're going to talk about all of these very big issues. So make sure you get involved by asking questions. I am starting the Q&A now, so you can put them in. But first, we are going to turn to our panelists. I am going to start with Despina Spanel. Thank you very much, Despina, for joining us. Head of Cabinet for European Commission Vice President Margarita Schinas. We also have Anna Papaopoulou, who is Acting Director of the Research and Innovation Outreach in DG RTD at the European Commission. Aura Sala is the Head of EU Affairs at Facebook. Andrea Renda, Senior Research Fellow and Head of Global Governance and Regulation, Innovation and the Digital Economy at CEPS. And last but not least, Michael Murphy, President of the European University Association. Do we have Despina there? Can we hear and see you? Oh, we also have joining us Eva Kaili, MEP and ITRA committee member from the European Parliament. Very good morning to you, Eva. I can see you getting set up. Can you see and hear us?
Yes.
Can we hear you?
I can see and hear you, but I have to change my iPad direction, so give me 2 minutes.
We will give you a couple of minutes. In that time, I will remind you that what we want to do and what we want to talk about today is how to bridge the gap between science and policy, how it's essential ensuring good policy making that is evidence-based. I know that's something that the Commission has indeed been working on as well. So perhaps, Despina, would you be available to start now? Oh, I think we've lost you. All this wonderful technology and innovation that I'm lauding so much has just failed us. Eva, are you ready to give us your opening thoughts?
Well, I think actually I managed to turn my iPad upside down, so I cannot talk to you.
These things happen, but I can see you very clearly and hear you.
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much for hosting this event. I think it's really timely, and also thank you because I'm surrounded by excellent panelists, and you managed to have an event that is not for women but have more women actually than men. So congratulations for that too. And Euractiv has always been discussing about very timely issues, and I think that at this point, having policymakers understanding what's happening with this pandemic and how we can protect democracy with knowledge and science, it's really, really important. We have been dealing with this question several years now. So we have been trying to connect with scientists, and we have been bringing them together close to politicians to understand how they are thinking, how they are developing their research. So I think it's really important to do this, and even more now that in order to fight this pandemic, and the prism of our thought has actually changed a lot, is to understand the scientific data, to base every decision we make on science. So I think it's really important to underline that. We have been working in the European Parliament with the Science and Media Hub. So we have been trying to find and discuss with scientists on all the different aspects that they have faced for this pandemic to make sure that we will provide citizens with scientifically based data in order for them to make decisions on what to believe. So my response actually to this question would be to make sure that citizens have options. They can see how we make decisions. They can see the different perspectives we have, because even science, you wouldn't see all the scientists agreeing with each other. So what we have to do is to make sure that they will have access to our data, to different points of view, and then they will decide how they can proceed. So we have, of course, to combine also the evidence we have with the understanding of the society and the economy, and we cannot just base policy making only to science. So we have to have different also understandings. Um, you mentioned now the pandemic and how things have developed there. I have to say that even now we are not sure exactly if we can respond to all the questions that there are out there. It's more of a, we're in a survival mode and we deal with many uncertainties. So everybody's turning to science to be able to understand and predict the different scenarios in order to decide how we're going to move. We saw that we have a problem with the contact tracing application that could actually be a solution, but at the same time they would evade completely our privacy. So I think that in Europe we don't have the same feeling. We do have a huge like a great sensitivity on privacy matters. We have seen that, and if you make polls in Europe, you will see that citizens care a lot about their privacy. So we have tried to have applications that they use technology that they don't hold data. At the same time, we are not all democracies, so we have countries that they have taken advantage of the pandemic to control citizens, and this is what we have to avoid. So we are understanding how challenging it could be, and we try to avoid having this scenario taking place in Europe or in any democratic country. So to do that, we are trying to set the same standards. This is the year that we are working on the data files, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the data governance. And we are trying to make sure that even our metadata, they have a protection in order to avoid any breach of privacy. So one thing that I would like to mention is that it has started a few weeks ago, an initiative of trying to make sure that we will not even have advertisement that would like personally target everyone. Why we did that? So the manipulation of the perception of someone that does not understand how things work online, we believe that has even altered results of elections. And this could, of course, harm our democracy, and there is no way to take it back. So to avoid having that, because you can use evidence not just to protect democracy, but also you can use data to attack democracy, to manipulate perceptions. And this is something we need to make sure we are protected from. So I would say that the architecture that we're going to choose, even on the algorithms that are being used, is really essential to have like privacy by design. Micro targeting should be very carefully applied, and we have to make sure there will be safeguards there. And in the end, I have to say that we are really working in my committee to do studies and provide with all these different aspects to our politicians, to my colleagues, in order for them to make decisions. The same has to happen with citizens. They have to have options. Even science cannot direct them or force them to do one thing or the other. We have to allow them to have enough data for them to make the right choices. I think my time is over because I see how you look at me. Yes, Jennifer, thank you so
I am
much.
nodding at you because you've hit all the main points, and I want to come back to them, but I can't keep track of them all if you keep going, because you're making some really strong points. And I
Thank
want
you.
to give Despina a chance to talk about, because you touched on the issue of non-democratic countries. And Despina, you're from the cabinet of Margarita Schinas, and of course the European way of life, which is something that we want science and research and education to feed into. So tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I hope you can hear me because I had a challenge with the sound.
We're
Thank you,
facing a
Jennifer.
challenging morning, but we can indeed hear you.
It's a pleasure to see Jennifer, particular pleasure to see Eva, and to work with her again and all the excellent co-speakers. You've picked up a very interesting angle to talk about the subject. I think no time ever before has evidence and science been more relevant than in COVID times. No matter what we do to manage the pandemic is based on evidence, epidemiology, science. Developing vaccines depends on science. Managing the pandemic depends on evidence. So I think we are living a time where evidence and science and people who are engaged in research become the most relevant. I will speak to you from my experience because in the European Way of Life portfolio, Vice President Skinas has an amazing combination of issues to handle, ranging from migration and security, but reaching also education, culture, uh, sports, skills, and then health. And bringing all that together, you definitely need evidence on where the gaps are, for instance. You definitely need science if you're going to take the right decisions. So when we were managing the pandemic, we saw how there is a gap where science is also considered only in one direction and in one field. What do I mean by that? When the pandemic hit, we all looked up in our books for the best epidemiologists because we wanted to be aware of what the situation is. But we will not be able to manage the pandemic simply on the basis of epidemiology. The obvious next field is economics because our economy is suffering severely. The employment is expected to suffer. Skills are not being developed the same way that they were because schools, universities, education institutions, research institutions are closed or challenged by the new methods of work. But we also need other sciences. We need sociology more than ever. The impact of the pandemic and the measures that we take have a significant outreach in our society, and they have a great impact on our people's health, mental health, and well being. So I think we need something more now from science. We need scientists of different fields to come together because scientists, when they look for excellence, they always look for it in their field. I think where we need more science and more evidence to come together is how do we deal with all the facets of the pandemic. And it's not just the pandemic. I think this is true for everything around us. So let's take the pandemic as an example, learn from it. And I think where we need more collaboration in science is bringing different fields together and managing our solutions in a multifaceted way, the same way the problem is multifaceted. What Eva mentioned in her speech is extremely relevant data, but data are read in different ways. There are epidemiology data that are read from a health point of view. There's economic data that is read from an economic and employment point of view. And there is, of course, all the issues of the data linked to our values that we should not miss. So again, there we need to have sufficient data, sufficient evidence, but for this to be managed by a group of scientists that represent multiple fields. So for me, this is the biggest science challenge. This is where universities can make a very big difference because they are hubs of different fields. They bring together scientists from every field. And I think this is where they can play a significant role.
Much, Despina. We're going to turn now to our third Greek lady of the morning. We're not only representing women today, we're strongly representing Greece as well. Anna Paragopoulou. Anna, Despina there mentioned bringing together different sort of silos of education. We're bringing together two different departments of the European Commission. So give us your opening thoughts and perspectives, showing that we're kind of trying to take a 360 view on this.
previous speakers. I think Jennifer, Eva, and Despina put very well the scene setter. So in the period of COVID, we all think about science and innovation in order to overcome the challenges we face, both in terms of scientific evidence and innovative solutions. And we all know that the European Commission put in place one of the biggest research and innovation programs aiming to deliver scientific results and innovation that create impact for Europe, but also inform our policy making. We have the joint research centers, which is a fantastic job in this context, but also we make extensive use of best scientific experts outside the Commission in order to provide advice to inform policy making in complex issues. One of those was, and it's going to be, how to improve pandemic preparedness and management. But the success of this work that you are doing, it's not going to happen if the social trust in research results is missing. And this, sometimes we take it for granted and it's not there. So one principal objective for the European research and innovation policy is to open up to the research to the society, and vice versa, to establish trust between the two, facilitate uptake of innovation, and achieve a greater impact. To establish this trust, we need researchers with high integrity standards, research conducted openly, responsibly, and transparently. This is very important because otherwise the citizens, they will not trust us. And we need to involve the society in the agenda setting and in doing of research, increasing scientific literacy in society. These are important aspects that we have to look at. And Desmond spoke about sociologists. Socioeconomic research is an important aspect that we have to look at. We did a lot in the past, we have to do even more in the future. The societal engagement in research and innovation has been promoted and embedded and continue to be the case in the new European research area policy that we have just established, but also in the activities of Horizon 320 and the upcoming Horizon Europe program. So it's even more now that we need scientific knowledge and understanding in society. And the Commission, of course, can walk the talk through its funding programs and policies. The task of opening research to society, though, requires other stakeholders, universities, research and innovation institutions, and territorial actors to become protagonists leading this transformation. And this is what we believe, that universities could play a crucial role in fostering interest in science and training young scientists and innovators. And this is what we are doing now. We are working very closely with our colleagues from DG EAC in order to develop a new vision for the universities in the future, where the universities need to be more interconnected, innovative, facilitate even more cooperation with partners and society and their innovation ecosystems, be inclusive and digital, but this is the way also that we are going to move ahead towards the green and sustainable development. So a lot of challenges in front of us. We need the society, we have to work with the society. The research and innovation, the science evidence is there, we can do more, but we have to do it together and for the society.
Thank you very much, Anna. Well, we're talking about information science, and let's be honest, a lot of people nowadays get their information from social media. So, Arasala, Head of EU Policy at Facebook, talk to me about the role of Facebook in disseminating information and the challenges that we've seen over the last year. It's been a particularly tricky year for social media.
Well, I think every year it can be challenging, but let me start by saying something very timely. At Facebook, we strike the balance between freedom of expression and the integrity of the platform by finding new ways to connect people to accurate and authoritative content. We do this in several ways. So let me give you a few examples. We work with fact checkers and we flag content that is false, and we create hubs for authoritative content, such as the COVID Information Center. We reduce the distribution of misinformation that does not violate our community standards, but undermines the authenticity and integrity of our platform. And we remove the content that does violate our community standards. We believe that it is the most impactful way forward. If we simply removed all posts flagged by fact checkers as false, the content would still be available elsewhere on internet, other platforms, or around our dinner tables. By leaving this content up and surfacing research from fact checkers or pointing people to reliable information, we are providing people with important information and context and therefore building their critical thinking. And this leads me to my second point. Beyond content moderation work, digital citizenship and media literacy are a huge part of the fight against misinformation and also disinformation. We need to equip people with the skills they need to participate constructively in online conversations. For example, in January, we ran a media literacy campaign ahead of Catalan regional elections to help users learn how to spot false news online. This is part of our ongoing efforts to raise awareness and help people be more critical about the information they see. We also launched this Get Digital program to provide lessons and resources designed, by the way, both for classrooms and at home, to young people on how to stay safe online, navigate content, and evaluate its trustworthiness. The aim is to build positive and inclusive communities online and develop healthy habits. Finally, stepping back for a second, we as a company, together with experts and universities, can do much more than help provide and promote authoritative content online. We can also be part of evidence-based policy making exercise, like addressed here by many speakers also. We are running both policy sandboxes and policy prototyping programs as part of our open loop platform. Some of you might be familiar with. Precisely because we believe that policymaking can benefit from the type of factual insights that academic research and experts generate. We have a program called Data for Good, through which we share some of our data sets in a privacy-preserving way to advance social issues such as responding to global pandemics like COVID-19, planning vaccination campaigns, or addressing climate change. We know that datasets can improve how nonprofits do their work, how researchers learn, and how public policies are developed. We work with over 450 partners in nearly 70 countries, which include universities and nonprofit organizations in the areas of disaster response, health, climate change, and economics. In 2020, our publicly available datasets were downloaded over 1 million times. I'm happy to go more in details, but let me stop here and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to some of those points you raised, obviously, as we go on through our discussion. But Andrea, let me turn to you. We've been talking around these issues here in Brussels for quite some time, but give us your opening thoughts. So you've heard that a lot of the speakers have already touched on some of the key points.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and greetings to all my co-panelists. I interact with them quite often. With obviously university in generally, because I'm a university professor currently at the School of Transnational Governance, European University Institute. With Eva and the STOA panel, as I sit in the STOA International Advisory Board, and in particular advising on artificial intelligence, and with Anna, because I sit in the ESIR advisory group that advises DG Research on the economic and societal impacts of research. I would like to reflect a little bit on the notion of evidence-based policymaking, because I've been quite active over the past 15 years in trying to promote policymaking based on evidence in Brussels and in member states. I've been materially contributing to the better regulation guidelines of the European Commission, writing about better regulation, performing and carrying out ex-ante impact assessments and exposed evaluations. All this, as in my opinion, can be described as a success story at the EU level. meaning that today we have a lot more evidence-based policymaking in Brussels. Not the same can be said entirely about the member states. And at the same time, we have a challenge, because when we say evidence-based policymaking, we largely say about performing cost-benefit analysis of new proposals, or going back and seeing what the efficiency and effectiveness of previous proposals or existing pieces of legislation are. And I think this is not everything that we have to do to ensure that there is evidence-based policymaking. What I want to say here is that evidence-based policymaking doesn't mean bottom-up policymaking. If we apply criteria to policymaking based on which the sum of what people want today is what we call a benefit in policy, we will not be able to incorporate in our policies things like resilience or sustainability, medium to longer term impacts. And I think this is a shift that is about to happen also in the European Commission. We are waiting for a communication on a better relation and the sustainable development goals. The pandemic has increased the emphasis on things like resilience. But here is a key point, because in my opinion, the university world that I wholeheartedly embrace and support has not been able, in particular in Europe, to support evidence-based policymaking at the beginning, and also the shift towards more goal-based policymaking later on. Here is the first thing that I think we should reflect on. Can universities get there, and particularly in Europe? Can we promote more interdisciplinary thinking and applied research alongside fundamental research in universities, so that we can fully support meaningful policymaking? Second series of thoughts very quickly that I want to bring in is related to two things that we've seen happening and accelerating over the past year, the pandemic, obviously, and the digital transformation. Well, the pandemic, I leave it there as a statement just to provoke my co-panelists. When the pandemic emerged, all the scientific advice mechanisms that were available at EU level failed to support initial thinking and strategic actions. The European Policy Strategy Center that existed under the Juncker Commission had not been transformed into what today is IDEA, but also we should discuss whether that is a sufficient support mechanism. The scientific advice mechanism in DG Research, even the JRC to a large extent, despite the fact that they had worked on resilience before, all of this were insufficiently supporting policymaking. So we need to reflect on that. What is the governance of scientific advice that we have in Brussels? When it comes to digital, and I'll finish with that, digital is increasingly creating a problem of privately funded research and our ability to distinguish what is real from what is a description of reality. Ceci n'est pas une pipe, if you wish, going back to Magritte. If we receive from our digital means information and we are not able to trust that data flow, that is going to be a problem. The university world and scientific advice have to help us going through this. And I think evidence-based policymaking will not be sufficient in that respect. STOA, to some extent, is doing this. We need foresight-based policymaking, and we need interdisciplinary thinking to back our vision of society for the medium to long term, which has to be incorporated in the way in which we design and implement public policies from now on. Thanks, Jennifer. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and we will come back to those questions. I'm glad you raised them because we like to be a little bit provocative here. But I'm going to turn now to Michael Murphy, President of the European University Association. Michael, there's been a lot of content already before we've heard from you, so you please reflect on that as well as giving us your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. As I was listening to the conversation, I was reminded that in the end, society is always challenged. And universities have been around for 1,000 years trying to support society, address them. So there's no change there. But the real challenge for us always is to make sure that we are positioned to deal with the future, not just the immediate, but the long term as well. And I'm here really this morning to assure you that the universities in Europe are doing their bit to position themselves to support society. The crises are many, there's been a list of them. But we've had a good year in one sense, in that, looking at this morning's topic, information, misinformation, and science, the performance in the past year has been remarkable. And the belief that the public have in science and in universities has grown. One statistic I remind people is that in 1919, influenza killed nearly 100 million people. COVID has the same virulence, but the mortality rate will be about 1% of what it was back then, taking population growth into account, because of science and the application of science. But positioning us for the future, we have just published our ideas on how we must respond to all the issues that you have raised already this morning. And our concept is that we have to adapt how universities function and the role that universities play in society. And we have redesigned our concept of the university under the term universities without walls. That in fact is the nature of our institutions that will be necessary in the coming years. Many facets. Without walls will have many meanings. On the one hand, we see a much larger proportion of the population engaged in learning, lifelong learning in particular. We see more diversity in that we should be attracting more of our disadvantaged, disabled and migrant cohorts. And we should have our alumni as members of the university for life, constantly engaged with us. We also see a necessary change in the structure of our institutions, which we see as being hybrid into the future, learning a lot from the past year, never wasting a crisis. So that means a lot of virtual learning intermingled with physical campus-based traditional learning. Without walls, again, in the sense of much more mobility, the students and the staff moving between institutions and even between countries. And we see mobility much more mobility between the campus, the learning environment and the workplace. For example, industry experts coming in to teach and our staff going out to reskill in the work environment into the future. We also see some changes in how we manage the learning experience. It has to be much more flexible, more learner-centered, students as co-creators of knowledge. And we see lifetime accumulation of learning being the norm with micro-credentials. And in content, and some have alluded to this already, imbuing our learners with a much better sense of scientific literacy, a value system that will support our democratic society. This is a major topic for this morning. And of course, everybody committed to the sustainability agenda. We have to bear in mind that our learners must be robot-proofed. How they have to live with artificial intelligence, and we'll have to compete with it. What we do in research must be advanced in interdisciplinarity. That's been mentioned by several this morning. Open publishing of data, open access to our research data so that people will have a greater trust, a greater confidence in the integrity of what we do and a better understanding of it. Again, without walls, much more engagement with public in governance of our institutions, and much more engagement in regional innovation. But last message, we have to maintain diversity in Europe. Darwin was right, there is more safety in diversity. And we see our institutions changing their course in different ways in different parts of Europe, also ensuring that excellence is distributed across Europe. Avoiding the model seen in other parts of the world of small numbers of elite, highly ranked, spuriously highly ranked institutions. Europe is going to go a different route. So in essence, in these few minutes, all I can say is that we're on a journey to significant change. It will require a lot of collaboration with society, much work to be done, though many are well on the path already. But our objective is to make sure that we're fit for purpose to deal with crises that will always exist. That's the opening message, Jennifer, and I'm sure we will pick up some further points.
Absolutely, Michael. I'm going to first of all start with a question that I know will come up, and Andrea's already alluded to it, to sort of set it aside in a way. I want to talk to you a little bit about university partnerships with private companies and the funding of those sorts of programs. We will come to Facebook, indeed. It funds a program at University College London called FAIR. It's researching AI. DeepMind funds programs. It's owned by Alphabet. Google itself funds various institutes for journalism. How can we be sure that this money doesn't come with strings attached, or are there, nefarious motives behind these companies getting into the universities?
I guess, Jennifer, the first thing to say is that collaboration with the business world is critical to our success in supporting society. Just look at the past year. The development of diagnostic tests and vaccines arose from a really deep collaboration between universities and the pharmaceutical sector, for example. But you raise the key point that within the university sector, we have to have governance processes and a value system that will adjudicate in each case the benefits and the risks associated with that collaboration. Because fundamental to sustaining the credibility of universities is the reality and the perception that we are independent, that we have an autonomy, and that we have the freedom to be objective. So the contracts have to be tested and very carefully to ensure that risk is managed in the collaboration. But under no circumstances can universities run away from collaboration with an incredibly important part of society.
Thank you, Michael. Ara, give us, you're the other side of this collaboration, as it were. How do you reassure people who may be concerned that a company like Facebook getting involved in education, and while at the same time paying these students as staff members, will allow them the significant independence of thought we expect from third level learning?
Let me first and foremost be very clear there. Like, whenever we actually finance something or cooperate or collaborate with any universities or researchers, it's always open information. So it's very important for us that people know where we have partnerships. So in that way, we are very transparent. But if I'm looking this from the Europe's economic perspective, for example, we are, yes, in a health emergency. However, this is also economic emergency soon. So we need a lot of collaboration between companies, between universities of applied sciences. And here, I think it's crucial that we do cooperation with universities and researchers. We actually have 25 million companies using our platforms only in the EU. And we understand how crucial it is that we have this cooperation, not only with companies, but also with independent researchers. And for us, for example, sharing data, having different programs like Data for Good, what I mentioned here, it's really crucial that they can actually base their research, and then companies can use this data to actually scale up and grow in the EU, and also support then economic growth in this union.
Thank you. Eva, let me ask you again, I'm drawing again on Andrea's questions here. He has suggested that during the recent COVID crisis in the first stages, that the policy wasn't supported by the research. Is that the case, or was it simply that the crisis management didn't take enough notice of the research and science-based evidence?
Well, actually, I would say that if you check with ECDC, so the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, you would see that they had access to data, but not data that we could, they followed common standards. So this made it impossible for us to make conclusions on what would be the best case scenario. I would say still is. We're still struggling, and we have different approaches. You can see that each member state has a different strategy. Even each region. So I would say yes, of course, in the beginning it was difficult to understand exactly what scientific data you should follow because of the difference of standards, because of how we collected them, how we shared them, and how we could actually get enough data to understand the pattern of this disease. And that's why, as said, with Andrea, we're working very close for many years. This is what we need to achieve also in our work in the Parliament and together with the Commission, to have legal certainty on how we can share this data and make sure that we will provide scientists with enough tools for them to make these conclusions. Let me also say that I still believe that we need to make sure that citizens will understand that science has also different aspects, different approaches, because sometimes we believe artificial intelligence is the vaccine for this disease. It is not. It could definitely give us a clear understanding on how this disease could be treated, what are the ways that we can address it the best, and when we had the best results. But still, we have a lot of work to do. And for the time being, we're trying to collaborate at as much as possible. And just a final thing, we did not mention a lot of virality. One of the problems we had was that some information that was mentioned as scientific information based had become viral in the beginning and misled a lot of people, maybe even politicians or scientists. So the virality aspect is really crucial, and we have to understand it, and we have to find ways when it spreads fake news to make sure that it's going to be somehow flagged, or as I said, we will provide the same time that somebody is looking at it to more options, so that you can at least reconsider before making decisions. Because in the end, democracy is to have a choice, to have freedom of speech, to have access to information. And I think we have huge responsibility to achieve that. And this pandemic has been a catalyst.
Thank you. Despina, you heard there Eva saying that member states maybe react in different ways and even different regions. So how do we pull together for this, whole European approach? How do we differentiate Europe compared to, say, other parts of the world? Now, I know we saw the former president of the US suggesting that injecting bleach might be a good idea. I mean, how does Europe, when it is fragmented between different countries, counter that sort of information with science-based knowledge? Despina. Oh, can you hear us? No, she can't hear us.
No, I can. Okay. You can hear me as well.
Yes, we can now, yes.
Apparently, this is the most famous expression of 2020. You're on mute, apparently. So, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I fully agree with Eva. The example of the epidemiological information that was not forthcoming to the European Agency for Disease Control is a good one. But let me tell you also something, that Europe has joined forces more than ever in the pandemic. There are things that people do not realize. You know, one of the first things that our president did when the pandemic hit was to hire an epidemiologist to advise her. And then she proposed to all the heads of state to connect their epidemiologists, who hold regular calls and video conferences and exchange information. So maybe, yes, information is not forthcoming from the national agencies that do not necessarily have the culture or the instinct to send to European agency information that they consider sensitive maybe, or of national interest. But when it comes to the epidemiological situation, member states have been exchanging, the specialists have been exchanging. And if you look at all the European Council meetings of the last 6 months at least, I think since the summer, the culture really changed. Never before have we ever heard more collaboration between governments and member states being prompted. It is quite an exceptional circumstance. So I think this is where Europe can play a role, putting together mechanisms where information is collected, that whether that is scientific or facts or anything that is linked to a crisis as we are facing now. We do have researchers also connected through various programs that have channeled now their efforts to the production and research on the vaccine and the variants. The HERA incubator that we announced a few weeks ago will do exactly that. It will bring scientists that are already working on vaccine issues and COVID issues together. So I think that there is so much collaboration on evidence than ever before, and it goes beyond what meets the eye, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm going to turn now, Anna, to a question from our audience, which is asking, is national bureaucracy able to digest the newest knowledge if most of them have no relevant education and practice? It's a big question and one I think that you might be able to tackle.
Well, I hope I understand the question, but what I would like to say concerning national bureaucracy, this is an area that we'll try also to address at European level by trying to be more agile, by trying to alleviate any kind of obstacles that we have in the context of collaboration, in the context of dissemination of information. I like very much the expression that Michael used about universities without walls. I think I would like to use the same expression about dissemination of information, sharing knowledge without walls. And there we are collaborating very closely with all the national authorities. And here I would like to raise a particular area that I think that in the European Commission we try to pave the way on sharing knowledge, sharing scientific knowledge and information. And it's the work that we are doing in the context of sharing scientific data in new initiatives that we have established last year, the European Open Science Cloud, where it is possible to put in an interoperable, open way, data available for researchers, citizens, but also for industry, which is very important because then it will be possible to use those data for market uptake. And I would like to link this work to the activity that we have taken very urgently last year when the COVID-19 breakout happened, where we try in less than a month's time to coordinate and collaborate with research organizations, research institutions across Europe, and to put in place a COVID-19 data platform for scientific data that has been open to everybody in order to be able to share this information and to be used as soon as possible for all the research that was taken place at that moment. And of course, we are continuing to populate this data more and more. I think it is important that at European level, we take initiatives to reduce national bureaucracy, to align or to try to provide a mechanism to align national administration also in the area of sharing knowledge, in the area of sharing data, but also in the area of collaboration between the different actors that they are important in the context of research and innovation activity on research and innovation, uptake of the results to the market. And if I allow, Jennifer, I would like just to add one point. I think it's very important to continue to work with the industry very closely on the basis of the values. I fully agree on that. And I would like to highlight that in the recent developments of research and innovation policies, we are going to create a pact of values on how research and innovation should be conducted. Is something that we are co-creating together with all member states and stakeholders, and to be proposed at the end of the year. It's an important initiative, in particular nowadays, that we want to push for more contact and more work with the industry, but also more collaboration with the society.
Thank you. Michael, let me ask you a little bit as well. I mean, our question here is if many of the people in bureaucracy have no relevant education or practice. I mean, let's expand that even to policymakers. In the EU, we know Ursula von der Leyen, Stella Kyriakides, the health commissioner, both are doctors. But would it help if we had policymakers, politicians who were also actually qualified in other areas?
I guess the right answer to that question is that we should be endeavoring to make sure that everybody should be sufficiently scientifically literate through our educational process. Second point I would make is that we learned in medicine many years ago the value of consensus statements by experts. And Despina alluded to that in a way when she addressed the matter of bringing the national experts together to agree policy recommendations based on evidence. Third point I want to make is that when examining the matter of gullibility, let's call it that, and ways to combat it, most reliable data indicates that education is the single most important intervention that can be made to reduce gullibility in society. And we in the university sector are really focused at the moment on the steps that we can take to increase scientific literacy, enhance the value system of the population, which includes politicians and everybody else. And that requires a culture change in the universities. It requires curriculum change. But we are on top of it if you want to read some more details in our vision statement.
Thank you. And I think you've answered there actually another question that has come in from our audience as well, which was for yourself, Michael, or for Andrea. So I'm going to get Andrea to deal with it. It's in what ways can education policies change to support media literacy? I think that is what you were touching on there with gullibility. Andrea, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, media literacy is a very broad concept. If we want to relate it to disinformation and fake news and trust in science, it has more specific meanings. In my opinion, universities are so far have been insufficiently equipped to increase awareness and media literacy because they have not fully, especially in Europe, merged the field of data science, which in the private sector tends to take a life of its own. In my opinion, that is an exaggeration, with the domain knowledge. Sometimes it's let's say the training of profiles that in some parts of academia are now called bilinguals. Researchers that have domain knowledge and at the same time have the possibility of using data constructively and smartly to find solutions to problems. Well, universities, I think, have to invest more, not in data science per se, but in the combination of social sciences and natural sciences and data science to make sure that their ability to help people interpret what is real and what is fake is increased. At the same time, universities can become more active players in society, as I think Michael was alluding to, by becoming the first, let's say, one-stop shop for citizens that wants to understand how to decipher and to distinguish what is real from what is fake. And in this respect, universities can also provide more training and awareness raising and education, not only to their students, but also, as Michael was saying, as lifelong learning and also as training of the general public and raising their awareness on how to distinguish, for example, fake news and how to avoid spreading fake news, knowing that this is something that has been easy until now, but it's going to become more and more complex the more we move into the age of deep fakes and the age of enhanced use of artificial intelligence systems to really tweak information and to make it more, let's say, close to either private interest or to malicious types of interests.
Michael, you're nodding along there. Would you like to add something to that?
Yes, Andrea made every point I think I can agree with. He's certainly right about the universities being much more engaged with civic society. And we can do that at many levels. Our students should be experiencing workplace and civic society as part of their undergraduate learning processes, addressing research questions that voluntary organizations may have, for example, and learning citizenship skills. Our staff need to be trained to be better communicators. I probably would benefit from that myself. And we certainly need to upskill our staff in the use of social media in a way that the younger generation now expects messaging to appear to them. American presidential debates always take place on university campuses, but far more events should be taking place on university campuses in order to influence society and employing the objective evidence that universities should be bringing to public debates. We should be much more active in media generally. So there's a whole spectrum of means by which we can increase the capacity of society to understand information and to evaluate it.
Yes, public debates in universities, when we can, of course, meet up again in person. I want to follow up that with a question from Elena, and Andrea, you also mentioned it. How do you change the language of the scientific research to make it more accessible for the public? Andrea, I'll ask you first that, and then Aura, I'd like you to reflect on that as well.
Yeah, that is not necessarily always easy. The more scientific research becomes complex and technical, the more it is difficult to communicate it to the general public in a meaningful way. And I think academics that are extremely familiar with the work that they're doing and academics that are open to interdisciplinarity based on experience are also the academics that are more able to speak different languages at different levels. Academics, Eva knows very well that academics come to the European Parliament. I think STOA has invited Nobel Prizes for annual lectures. Some of them are much more able to communicate in plain words the purpose and impact of their research. They don't necessarily have to go into the details. When I was teaching at Duke University a few years ago, we used to involve civil society by organizing monthly meetings, which we were calling periodic tables, in which we would explain, different researchers would come and people would grab a beer and listen to how they were explaining their research and what is the purpose and how and why research is actually one of the best jobs that you can think of in life. And people were really engaged by this. I think interdisciplinarity and a taste and a purpose and a vocation for awareness raising are what matters here. And I'm pretty sure that there are many academics who are extremely good at communicating the impact and purpose of their research by skipping the technical details that they will then reserve for the academic conferences. This can happen, and I wouldn't shy away from this. I think if an academic stays in the ivory tower, pretending that only the people at their level of sophistication in their domain can understand and should understand what they do, I think these people are people that are more dinosaurs that belong to the past than researchers that want to play their role in society.
Well, Aura, I want you to reflect on that from your perspective. I mean, does the language with which academics communicate need to change? And perhaps not just the language, but the vectors, the medium, and things like Facebook.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question, and I would like to thank Mr. Renda, or also reflecting back to the EPSC. I had honor to serve with Anne Mettler and others in the Juncker Commission. And I have to say that's something that I'm really missing now from von der Leyen's Commission, because how we communicated, we used a lot of graphs, we used a lot of data to illustrate this kind of evidence-based policy making. And I think it helped not only President Juncker and his team, but also like different services in the Commission to use this kind of a very digest and well-made communication in their everyday work and when they communicated out to the citizens. So that being said, I would like to always think from the perspective of the audience. I just submitted my PhD on Eurocrisis, and I'm not expecting that it will be a bestseller in the EU or globally. However, whenever I'm presenting this evidence that what I discovered in my work, I always try to think like why this would be interesting from the audience perspective and how it relates to their everyday lives. Because when we can understand it from our everyday lives perspective, then we can also understand how important it is. But let me also reflect a little bit from the company's perspective, because this also goes to our vision beyond this digital and media literacy that we are all talking about here also. And we think this as from the more holistic citizenship approach to equip people to fully and not only critical thinking or media literacy, but also how to participate in digital society, this kind of conversations. And also we are thinking this from really from a society perspective, that it needs to be safe, respectful, and we need to also be super responsible how we spread information, and so that people actually understand what they learn and what they read. And we have been doing a lot of efforts to try to think this from the audience perspective, like what is digital wellness, what is digital engagement, and how we empower people to actually know what they learn and how they read online news, and so that we don't have these filter bubbles where we only read news. So we understand the challenges that we face here, and we also make this digital literacy library available in now, if I remember correctly, 45 languages. Because also when you are thinking these things from the audience perspective, it's super important that in the EU we can all learn and read in all our 23 official languages. We cannot expect that everyone knows French or German or English, right? So we have these ready-to-use lessons for parents, for educators, to help young people between 11 and 18 to think critically and share thoughtfully online. So long story short, I think that we all need to think from the audience perspective.
Well, I want to ask you as well, is there an age gap? Do you perceive any difference between younger people in different generations in how critically they think, but and how they engage with online information in particular? I mean, or I don't know if you've got statistics or anything on that.
So I have to say that, of course, you need to be 13 to use our platforms. So that's why we are always thinking beyond that age limit. But of course, we also see that younger people are using, for example, Instagram, and a little bit older generations are using more Facebook. I cannot speak on behalf of TikTok or Twitter, but I assume that in TikTok they have a little bit a younger audience also. But that's why we take really seriously the safety, for example, on Instagram of younger generations, and also we try to then target these campaigns towards the right age groups.
Now, I also want, gaps exist not just obviously in age, but I want to talk a little bit about gaps in society and, the diversity of access to education and information. Despina, do you think how do we bridge these gaps? Because there are haves and have-nots in terms of society in general across Europe and across different member states.
European policies are aimed to actually cover these gaps by giving access to the opportunities that we have to everyone. This is how we manage our research programs. This is how we manage our education programs that cover learning at all ages, that cover exchange of students across Europe. And as you know, goes beyond the classes, beyond the member states, nationality, languages. So I think that we need to reach out to these programs even more. We need to use the opportunity of information society to diffuse the opportunities that exist so that everyone can have access. I think that when we created the policies for this mandate, we started with the so-called upskilling agenda and reskilling agenda. And there you will find a lot of information as to how we intend to fund exactly this kind of access of people to skills, because sometimes this is what it is about. And equally for a European education area, there is a lot about that, about the importance of reaching out to the parts of Europe that do not have access to the same kind of education opportunities and outputs, and bridging that gap.
Eva, let me put the similar same question to you. I mean, how do we ensure diversity and equity in access to both information, and to the opportunities to learn?
Well, I have the feeling that we have too much information and we have access, at least for the time being, especially in Europe. And definitely we need to support the plan of acquiring digital skills for more people, that they don't either have access or knowledge on how to use the tools that they already have. Despina Spanu and has worked a lot on that. They managed last summer to present the European strategy on digital skills. And let's not forget that Europe doesn't have the full competency for health or education. So this was like a vision that I believe was very important to achieve in order to give these options and the opportunities to reduce this gap that we have in the online world. I believe people need to actually reach out and take advantage of all the opportunities that Europe has been providing to them. Sometimes, unfortunately, we fail to make sure that they will know, they will be familiar with what is available to them. But I think digital skills are really, really important. And because you asked a bit before about the age, I think that empowering communities through social media has been actually very important and has attracted a lot of attention, and a lot of young people that felt maybe isolated, or they had like, let's say, they were challenged to define their identity. I believe that through social media, they managed to have like more options and access to not just the European, but like a global platform. So what we have to do is to make sure that they understand, they have the opportunity to control their presence online, and they take advantage in a positive way the tools that they have. And I think this, of course, would help us have a better quality of democracy, because it's not very easy to choose out of this infodemic. As I said before, you have what to believe and what to keep and who to follow. So I think this is really necessary. So in the end, as I said, we have to provide options, but I think you're right. At this point, we need to make sure that we will also have availability of digital skills for anyone for free, at least in the European Union. So and let me just underline one thing. We have been the last years working on making sure that especially girls will have access to coding lessons, so they will understand how algorithms work. Even colleagues of mine, we try to produce like legislation or like ideas on how to make sure that by design we're going to have privacy, but they don't understand how algorithms work. So then tech people come and they said that this is possible, this is not, and we cannot understand if indeed it is. So if you understand how an algorithm works, it's politics, then you know how the architecture of this algorithm should take place in order to avoid biases, discrimination, to make sure that we will protect our democracy, there will be no manipulation, and we will not have applications that require human attention to an extent that this could be harmful for the freedom of choices that somebody would like to have, or by too much personalization or tailor-made content. So I believe striking a balance is really important. And this is what we have been working on, also to have the necessary studies available for politicians.
I couldn't agree more. It's all very well to use the tools, but if you don't have any buy-in or ownership or diversity in manufacturing and engineering those tools, you're going to have some slightly skewed outcomes. But Michael, I know you were agreeing there, but I would like to ask, how do you get more diversity and equity in access to education? I know this year COVID-19 has shown us that remote learning is a real possibility.
Correct.
Are there tools like that we can take forward?
Yeah, and early last year we surveyed universities across Europe. Well, we represent 48 countries, and some 70–80% of them already at that time saw online learning and blended learning as a fundamental tool to increase access and to increase diversity. But I would also say that it's one thing to provide people with the tools, It's another thing to actually attract them into education. So we have to keep re-emphasizing the message that education is the single biggest enabler of social mobility. That message must be out there. And then we have to go out physically. Successful universities have learned this over the decades. You've got to go out into the disadvantaged areas. You've got to go into the primary schools. You've got to go into the voluntary organizations and demystify the ivory tower of academia. So we have the tools. We know what works to attract people. We simply have to put more energy and more resources into doing it.
Thank you, Michael. Now, Ora, we have a question from our audience. I'm sure you probably anticipated it directly for you. It's how do you counter criticism that social media are designed to polarize opinions and hence societies? I'm sure you have had to field this question before.
Yes, and I would like to start by saying that we need to remember that we can all tailor-make our social media channels, right? So actually, when you go to Facebook, for example, you can choose to give you it gives you an information why I see this post, for example. You can choose your favorite pages. You can choose friends that you actually want to follow. And we actually changed our algorithms already a couple of years ago so that you will see your friends and family's post first on your newsfeed. It's up to you which news pages you actually follow. It's up to you who you follow and what kind of a content you actually create. And we need to also remember that social media platforms are private companies. And that's why I'm really eager to have this conversation with policymakers, with civil society. What is the, how we define public sphere? Because sometimes in some of these conversations and debates that I'm taking part of, people actually think social media as this kind of a public entity or public sphere. But actually, these platforms are private companies. And also, let me also emphasize that we are not media, because we don't edit any of the content on our platforms. So people post the content to our platforms. We can only ban or then reduce, so take completely out this content, but we don't edit this. And if we would ask from BBC or Financial Times, I think that they would definitely say that we are not media or this is not quality journalism. So whoever says that, I think we can have this conversation. So just saying that tailor-make your own social media and make sure that you know how our algorithms work.
I think that's probably, whether or not you're, I think that's a question for another day and another conversation, because we are running out of time and I want to give everyone the chance to have a few final words. Anna, let me go to you. Any final thoughts or comments on the discussion you've heard so far?
Well, thank you very much. No, I think that everybody said how important is, first of all, that we engage collaboration between the different stakeholders in the years to come, in order to build up the trust of the society through collaboration with research, education institutions, public authority, business, and civil society. This is very important. It needs to be done under conditions, under principles, but this is the only way to go ahead. So I think also it's very important that we promote all the ideas that were heard about citizens' engagement, communication to the citizens, skilling up the researchers, but also the young scientists and the young people in order to be able to absorb, to understand all the information that's coming out from the science and the research activities. It is extremely important that we work in a way that there are no borders, there are no walls between the university and the society, between the research organization and the society, and there are no walls between the public administration and the society. And I think only through coordination at European level, member state level, and in particular with the stakeholders and the researchers themselves, that they're so much involved. This is the only way that we will be able to go ahead in order to address the big challenges that we have ahead, but also to ensure that the results of the research and innovation, whether are used for policy making, whether they are used for market uptake, whether they are used to addressing pandemics, or to promote the transformation, the digital and green transformation, are accepted of by the citizens. This is only if we work together and with the citizens and for the citizens.
Thank you very much, Anna, for those thoughts. I think you've summed up really, really well there. But Despina, I will go to you for your closing thoughts if you've anything to add to what your colleague has already said, which is a tough job.
Well, yeah, Anna did a very good job. I will come back to my original remarks. I mean, for me, if I wanted one takeout of this discussion, would be exactly the need for universities and science institutions and researchers to bring in a more interdisciplinary approach to evidence, to break the silos and break this unilateral view of approaching problems, be that the pandemic or the financial crisis or the unemployment crisis. We need disciplines to work together, and I believe research and university institutions are best placed to do that, and recommend to governance multidisciplinary solutions to any problem.
Thank you very much. Aura, your final thoughts. I'm sorry I had to stop you from the debate on media because I think it's going to be a big issue. We will have you back to discuss that again. But any thoughts around this area that we've been talking about regarding how we move forward with a more science-based policy making and how that can be spread to the wider society?
Thank you so much, and looking forward to that conversation, our next conversation. I would like to say something about how we are sharing data, because we have been talking about this, and I just wanted to address that also from Facebook's perspective, because this is something that we are often asked. So some data sets are actually shared openly and publicly from Facebook. For instance, population density maps developed from satellite imagery. Such data are not sensitive and that can be shared publicly. But also other data sets are only shared with our partners, NGOs, and researchers. And I know that research community wants to have more data, but of course we need to be super cautious from the privacy perspective. But we have this data licensing agreement with researchers. And these data include the granular mobility datasets or specific insights pulled from our platform. And when using insights from let's say, Facebook platform to reach individuals during disasters or during health outbreaks like COVID-19, we shared aggregate data with specific organizations like Red Cross, UNICEF, UN, and the World Healthcare Organization. So we actually share data, but we are really respectful when it comes to privacy.
Thank you. Michael, give us your closing thoughts based on all the conversation you've heard here from policymakers, from industry, and from think tanks.
Well, I guess some of the key messages from me were that, one, the past year has reminded us how important education, research, and universities are to society, and that into the future, the success of Europe will be very much dependent on successful universities. And there's great consensus. The Council of Ministers recently, the Commission documentation, we shared the analysis that Europe needs strong, open, without walls, very engaged universities. But I have to say that it requires partnership because the enabling legal frameworks must be supportive. There must be an investment to ensure the universities are strong. And we have a job to do to improve leadership and capabilities within the sector. So this is a critical subject for European society and not just for the university sector itself.
Absolutely. Eva, I mean, you're heavily involved with STOA. Are you going to tell us what's coming up in the future, as well as reflecting on what we've heard today?
Well, what's coming up in 2021?
You're on
Actually,
mute.
it's a lot of. You
You're
cannot
good. No, we're
hear
good
me?
now.
Okay.
We can hear you now. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a lot of legislation in 2021, and I think we will try to be proactive to avoid all the negative consequences that we actually mentioned. So we have the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the Data Governance Act, and then we have the NIS Directive, or the metadata and security of telecoms. We have a lot of files on the digital strategy actually of Europe, and we are expecting the artificial intelligence to be presented by end of March on our working program, and the ethical principles. And I think if you connect all these dots, you can have the maximum security for our online presence. And as I said, we had the pandemic as a catalyst, so now everybody's trying to make sure that by the end of this year, we're going to have the first steps and the guidelines on how to proceed to make it more easy for scientists to share data, and of course to become more resilient for any other global challenge that we might face in the future. And with STOA, OECD, and Andrea Renda, and everybody who has been part of this team, we are trying to set global standards for a safer and I would say trustworthy artificial intelligence and internet. And I believe we will try to follow the example of GDPR, to influence and to make sure that we will be able to have like this alliance of democracies, not just in EU but also beyond our borders, because the new technologies are not just unstoppable, but they are also cannot be stopped by, or they don't have physical barriers. So we definitely have to have a global approach. So I think forums like this one are really important in order to exchange views and understand how we should proceed in order to not make mistakes. And we have the chance to make it right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrea, I'm leaving the last word to you two, but it's going to be a short one. If you can wrap up quickly with your final thoughts.
Okay, I have three statements. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Okay, super quick. First of all, we have, I think the debate has been fascinating. Also, it shows what responsibility universities have in society today. I would just give one example here. Many business schools around the world and in Europe still push a vision of capitalism, what we call shareholder capitalism, that is clearly unfit for the challenges of the medium to long term, in particular sustainability. So what is taught really shapes our minds, and that's very important. And universities have that responsibility. Second, I want to say something good about, for example, what Anna and her colleagues are doing. The Horizon 2020 projects on COVID, I think, are the real frontier of interdisciplinary research at the moment on COVID. And I happen to be involved in one of them called Periscope, and there we have the different disciplines that try to cooperate to really make sense and draw lessons from what has happened. Third, I want to quote one of my favorite academics from the past century, Herbert Simon, who studied information-rich societies like the one that we live in now. And he used to say that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Now, in my opinion, universities have a key responsibility in helping us cutting through the noise of overabundant information and direct our attention towards a really evidence-based and science-based information and the consequences for public policy. Thanks a lot, Jennifer.
Thank you, Andrea. I really like that quote. I think I will definitely be using it myself in future debates. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think it was absolutely fascinating. We ranged far and wide around the topic. We did have quite a lot of questions from our hundreds of viewers, but unfortunately we didn't have time to get to all of them. But thank you very much. Do join us again at Euractiv for the next debate, which we will be having in due course. And you can follow using the hashtag EA Debates. Have a great day and a great weekend.